Hi, I'm Ami Baum. I'm chair of the Jewish Community Foundation of Greater Pittsburgh, and I'd like to welcome you to our inaugural learning event. And I'd also like to thank you for your ongoing participation, leadership, and commitment. A number of years ago, Warren Buffett, the legendary investor, stood up in front of a group like this in his hometown of Omaha, Nebraska, and issued this challenge. I challenge you to make our community the most generous community per capita in the country. Today, I'm challenging all of us to take advantage of the single largest generational wealth transfer in our history and rethink what our legacy will be. Many of you know that the Federation has been and is currently involved in an evolutionary strategic plan to address the important issues that face our Jewish community. One of the cornerstones of this initiative is having the foundation becoming the center for Jewish and non-Jewish philanthropy, helping you and your families with legacy planning. So what is legacy planning? First, it's to enable you to live your remaining life free from financial fear. Second, it's to enrich your relationships with your families and children. And finally, to nurture your soul by ensuring your Jewish community thrives while inspiring your children to do the same. So how do you get started and continue your leadership? By having an essential conversation with us, your foundation, around your legacy, the interchange between your financial assets and your values. We have many resources and capabilities to help you. We're living in unprecedented times, which requires different structures and thinking. The Federation, and by extension, the Foundation, are committed to a bigger future for you, your family, and our community. Please accept the challenge to help us capture a portion of this largest intergenerational wealth transfer and perpetuating your values for generations to come. Thank you and enjoy the program.
Thank you, Ami. My name's Dan Brandeis. For those of you who I haven't met, or for those who I've met or don't recognize me with the beard, I promise when we're back in the office, I'm getting rid of it. First, I really want to thank Ami for his leadership, vision, and the enthusiasm that he has brought to this position. In his first year as chair, we achieved a record result, raising over 27 million in additions to our foundation, which brought our total assets under management to over $340 million. But not one to rest on his laurels. Ami is encouraging us to think big and to do new things so that we can engage more donors, more advisors, to raise more resources that will benefit our community for years to come. I also wanted to thank Rabbi Danny Schiff, who has not only continued his teaching during this challenging time, but actually expanded his course offerings so more people have a chance to learn and to connect with others in the Jewish community when gathering in person has been such a challenge. Although it's just September, it's not too early to think about year-end giving. There are a number of tax advantages available to you through the foundation. For example, consider giving appreciated securities. Donations of appreciated securities not only receive a full fair market value tax deduction, but they also allow you to avoid capital gains. The proceeds of any contributed assets can be used or held in a donor advised fund for you to give out to charities as you choose later. They can also be used to fund endowments to support charitable organizations that you care about. Should you wish to receive income for your life but get a tax deduction now, you can also use appreciated securities for that. You can create charitable gift annuities or charitable trusts that You get a tax deduction upon creation, but you're able to retain an income stream during your lifetime. Another year-end opportunity